Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestle YouTube channel. I'm Aaron Nix. It's time to discuss Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Enjoy the highlights, by the way. So the show opened quite nicely, actually. I've been quite critical of Fire and Flavor's work. I think they're really good. I just don't think that they've been going in the right direction ever since they won the Knockout Tag Team Championships. They took on Havoc and Novaya here, a rematch of sorts of the final, which obviously crowned the first champions. And it was really good. This was a lot better than I was hoping it would be. Now I noticed Jessica Havoc was playing the face in distress quite a bit during this match, and I found that very strange because obviously she's the huge powerhouse. It should be more difficult for her to be isolated than obviously Novaya. However, the story played out quite nicely. Now the match was actually very good, hard hitting. I felt that Fire and Flavor, actually, this was probably one of the better matches I've seen them have, if not the best match I've seen them have, actually. I really like Jessica Havoc and Novaya. I think they're really good workers, particularly Jessica Havoc. Although we're not going to see much of them as a tag team, because at the end of the match, Novaya is the one who finally turns on Jessica Havoc. And the commentary team did a good job as well, because they spent a lot of time talking about how, Novaya has been considered a weak link, but Jessica Havoc doesn't believe in that, and she's looked after her friend, and they stand side by side, and they look great again, and they're kind of having this reunion, and then boom, Novaya just turns on Havoc, and we're done here. Wow. That's a shame, because I feel like the Knockouts tag team division, well, it just doesn't have any other tag teams, really. So yeah, all of a sudden, it just feels like this tag team division is kind of falling on its arse. Am I interested about Novaya versus Havoc? Yes, in a way, because I feel like Novaya has a lot to offer. She's stunning, she's beautiful, she's very talented, she's very hard-hitting as well. She's got a great alternative look. So she could be a fantastic singles wrestler. Time will tell. But it is disappointing because you just think, okay, well, who's going to knock off Fire and Flavor now for those tag team titles? You need to really think about bringing in maybe some indie tag teams. There must be some decent women's tag teams on the indie scene. It might be worth raiding the indies a little bit or offering these people some contracts to work for Impact Wrestling, because otherwise, this Knockouts tag team division just feels a little bit lackluster. Ironically enough, they brought these belts back. I don't think they really needed to, and frankly, I'm kind of being proved right because of the severe lack of depth in their tag team division, so there's not really much else I can say in that regard. The real sleeper hit of the show is the match that maybe people might have thought, can't be bothered. Larry D versus Sammy Callahan. Excellent stuff. The only problem is Triple XL really feel like the big time jobbers. When you've got two guys of this size and this quality, it is a bit disappointing. They never seem to win a match, ever. Now, Sammy Callahan obviously is an excellent worker. I feel that this rivalry with Trey Miguel has brought about a completely refreshed and almost rebranded form of his character, and I'm really here for it. I really enjoy it. I love the gimmick. I love the look. His ring gear is sick, by the way. I can't wait to find out who does his jackets, because I want a jacket like that for when I return to wrestling. And man, I'm a big fan of Sammy Callahan. I love his style. I love his promos. He feels real, and he works a very real and deliberate style. And Larry D, the best hand in the house, certainly can be quite conducive to that style, which I appreciate. So, yeah, good match. Physical, hard-hitting. Sammy Callahan goes over. And, of course, the storyline furthers between Trey Miguel and Sammy Callahan, because Trey Miguel doesn't return the favour and come down to help Sammy when he's getting beaten up, even though Sammy helped him last week. And, of course, they bump into each other backstage, and Sammy Callahan offers him the opportunity one time to work with him, to allow Sammy to mentor him. And, of course, Trey Miguel basically tells him to shove it up his arse. But it's a great continuation of their storyline, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go next with it. Brian Myers versus Suicide. Again, I don't want to sound like a harsh bastard, because Brian Myers is obviously very talented. There isn't a single wrestler on the Impact Wrestling roster that isn't good at what they do, but I just don't care. I don't really feel the gimmick either. I'm the most professional of wrestlers. No, you're not. I know what it's meant to do. It's meant to garner a little bit. I just don't really care enough. And Suicide feels like kind of more of a novelty, more of a prop than he does a legitimate member of the roster. Hey, remember him from the video game? And I didn't really care much for the match. Obviously, Brian Myers wins. He then calls out Matt Cardona afterwards. He makes insinuations, and you think, that's great, but I just don't care. I really don't. I want to see more, or I want to see something different, but I certainly don't want to see this. The match was fine. Bit short. Meh, is what it is. Suicide's a really good worker. I don't know who's under the mask right now, because I know a multitude of different guys have been under that mask, but sticking back in the X Division and let him have some excellent exhibition matches, because this one wasn't it for me. Sorry. Now, speaking of the X Division, shock horror, we get the complete highlight of the night, at least in terms of wrestling. Emotionally, I really did enjoy the main event. The team of Josh Alexander and TJP, that's too much. You can't be putting two people that good looking on the same team. That is unnecessary, especially Josh Alexander. Woo! Man crush is in full alert. Have you seen the thighs? Sorry, Josh. He'll never come back on the podcast if I keep this up. Good friend of the Wrestle Plug podcast, Josh Alexander, and of course TJP, who I'd love to have on as well, because I fucking love TJP. They took on Madman Fulton and Ace Austin, and this was, frankly, a blockbuster. How many times must I tell you to watch the X Division? How many times must we say in this podcast that you must watch Impact Wrestling, if nothing else, just to watch the X Division matches? They are so good. They are some of the best wrestling matches in the world. And also, they're not just nonsense flippy-do matches involving a load of leg thigh slapping nonsense that you get on AEW. These are legitimately good wrestling matches with good stories and great psychology. Great psychology here. Madman Fulton and Ace Austin are a fluid team, a perfect unit, because they know each other. Josh Alexander and TJP, however, both gunning for the X Division title held by Ace Austin. A little bit of malfunction at the junction. There's a lot of dissent between the two. Josh Alexander believes he's the ring veteran, so TJP can just, sit at ringside and shut his mouth and await his tag if he's lucky. And Josh Alexander makes that very clear from the get-go. And this match was physical, and it's great to see that Madman Fulton and Josh Alexander work so well. Can we stop acting like it's a surprise that someone of Josh Alexander's frame and physique can suplex a guy like Madman Fulton? Have you seen Josh Alexander? He's a fucking tank, mate. There is no reason why he wouldn't be able to muscle up any wrestling reward. Josh Alexander is one of the best wrestlers in the world. You will realise that. Josh Alexander is one of the best wrestlers in the world, and it isn't just because he came on this podcast. It's because he is legitimately one of the best in the world. Anyone who knows anything about wrestling, and anyone I've spoken to within the wrestling industry, has said Josh Alexander is the guy, man. And he is so fucking cool too, and he is. He really is so fucking cool. And I loved his deliberate style, and I love the fact that he breaks a lot of the traditions and the molds of wrestling while keeping it fairly traditional. It's a very strange kind of oxymoron in a way. For instance, the headlock, when he's got Madman Fulton in a headlock and Madman Fulton tries to shoot him off, and no, he just holds on to it. The way he takes the back suplex, still holds on to the headlock. He makes these moves mean something, and I remember talking about these guys when they had their singles match a few weeks back and saying how lovely it was that these guys worked such a deliberate and honest style, and it felt like it meant something, and every move meant something. And every time Josh Alexander or TJP is in the ring, these moves mean something. Ace Austin is a world-class athlete. Madman Fulton is a very, very underrated big guy as well. Still feel like him and Lance Archer have got a tag team waiting for them, and that can be money on its own right. But this was excellent. And of course, it all built to the dysfunction between Josh Alexander and TJP. Alexander hits a fantastic move. TJP gets the blind tag, hits that gorgeous frog splash. TJP goes for the pin. Josh Alexander doesn't realise he got the blind tag. Again, fluidity in tag teams. And what a fantastic story as well, because I'm always banging on about how I hate tag teams that are made up of singles guys, unless it's for a reason like this. This was brilliant. Great storytelling. What the fuck do you think you're doing? It's my pinfall. And in all the confusion, Ace Austin rolls up TJP and gets the win for his team. And the heels, the sneaky devils that they are, get out of Dodge. Pretty much flawless. Pretty much flawless. Every single week when you have TJP and Josh Alexander and Ace Austin and the X Division out there, they provide us with world-class wrestling, with world-class storytelling that means something. No thigh slapping for the sake of thigh slapping. No stupid flips for the sake of stupid flips. No, everything means something. Oh, there's flips, there's athleticism, but it all works around the story of the match. World-class. Absolutely world-class. Honestly, not much else I have to say. If the highlights on this YouTube video haven't whetted your appetite enough to go back and watch it, well, my lord, I don't know what to say to you. You obviously just don't like good wrestling. It's as simple as that. Sorry, but this was fucking quality. And actually, if I ran a wrestling school, this would absolutely be 101 in terms of storytelling. It's phenomenal. Go and watch it. You You cannot fail to learn something from watching a guy like Josh Alexander or TJP. If you don't learn something from watching them, then simply put, you don't belong in the business, as far as I'm concerned. Right before the main event, there was a load of nonsense. Don Callis tries to wind up Rich Swann by trying to curry favour of sorts, get into the head of Willie Mack, who's just kind of sitting there looking at him like, man, shut the fuck up. I've seen many fools like you throughout my life. Love Willie Mack, man, one of my favourite wrestlers. Would like to see him getting used a lot more on the product in terms of wrestling. This just leads to an all-out brawl. Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers get the jump from behind. This was the only thing that I could really tolerate watching Kenny Omega in on this show. I just fast forward the rest of it because honestly, I feel like his hijacking of the show is actually damaging the quality of the show a little bit. And hell, I was proved right a little bit last week. They had ridiculously low ratings, despite the fact they had Kenny Omega out there for 15 minutes waffling on. But of course, the Kenny Omega stands have got plenty of excuses. Oh, it's not Kenny's fault. It was because he was put in the middle of the card. Please shut up. Please don't be so pathetic and so childish. If the ratings drop and Kenny Omega is on the show, then he must be responsible to a certain extent. Not entirely, but he's still on that show. Therefore, everybody who is on the show has to take responsibility in some form or fashion. That is what is called working as a team. I wouldn't expect you to understand that. But Eddie Edwards comes in, kind of, they're creating the locker room disparity, aren't they? Oh, these outsiders. You know, Eddie Edwards has become the de facto locker room leader of sorts. I would much prefer James Storm to be in this role, but he's busy showing off how many matches he's had, and we're all very happy for James, to be fair. And also, something that was very strange was this, I'm not sure if it was a pay-per-view promo. I'll put it up on the screen so you guys can check it out for yourselves. It was this kind of very subliminal promo vignette. You know, it was kind of like, it felt like an indie rock performance. You know, they were backstage, they were showing loads of posters on the wall, and then it says Impact Wrestling coming soon. And then there's kind of like an anagram of sorts at the bottom. My apologies if I got that wrong. Remember the old Hangman days when he used to pick a letter and all that before he got hung. Strange. But yeah, no idea what that is. Very curious to see what it is. I'm sure that's probably going to be an Impact Plus pay-per-view of sorts, but I was very intrigued. Like that. Looked good as well. Very interested to see what that is going to be later down the line. And of course, the main event, what can you say really? Eric Young versus James Storm. And James Storm's 1,000th wrestling match. That's incredible. That's amazing. 1,000. I don't think people understand how much of a big deal that is, and they probably won't appreciate it as much because it's on Impact Wrestling and not enough people watch it for my money. But man, what an achievement. Honestly, honestly, genuinely, mate, congratulations. That is astonishing. I've always loved James Storm. We had Chris Harris return for this. Don't know if he's going to be returning long term, if we're going to get a AMW return later down the line, but I thought it was really fucking cool to have him at ringside. Looking very healthy and happy as well, which is good to see when wrestlers have been in the business as long as someone like Mr. Harris has. And it was just cool. It was really cool. Obviously, Violent by Designer at ringside. James Storm's got his little posse, the kind of Impact originals. There were so many guys involved as well in this, with Chris Harris and James Storm and Chris Sabin and Eric Young. All of these guys are Impact originals. These are TNA originals. These are guys who made the show as entertaining as it was back in 2002, 2003, 2004 when I really started picking up on it. You know, all those great, I remember their first ever pay-per-view. You think how many of these guys were involved in that. It's so cool to see all this time forward that they're still plying their trade and still doing a great job. And it's James Storm who picks up the win, as you would expect. He's got to win his 1,000th match. Come on. Great match, though. Eric Young is the perfect opponent for him. Good worker. And it was just a really feel-good moment, particularly when he rolled out of the ring and he looked to the sky and he thanked Bob Ryder, who unfortunately passed away a few months ago. Quite an emotional moment, Even I was choked up a little bit watching that. It was very cool. And Impact and the wrestlers at Impact have never forgotten where they've come from. And they've always been very proud of the fact they're part of Impact. And Impact has a kind of ECW vibe. Not in the sense of how it presents itself, but backstage there's definitely a unity. There's a strength. There's an understanding of, people don't take us as seriously as they do the other brands. But we can do something that nobody else can do. They have a product. They have a roster of talents that are, frankly, highly effective, very good at what they do, highly professional. They have some of the best wrestlers in the world, but people want to turn their nose up at it because they feel that, this is still 2009, 2010 TNA, which is not. It's just not. That's not the case. This show is excellent. I loved this show so much. it does help a little bit when I fast forward Elton John and all these ridiculously over-the-top campy performances, and I'm certainly not going to watch that AEW garbage fucking trailer that they always put in the middle. I don't care. Yeah, if you fast forward all the AEW nonsense, which frankly I think does not benefit Impact whatsoever, this is a world-class show, and this was definitely one of my favourite Impacts I've seen all year. Really great. All the wrestling matches were excellent. Even the matches that I wasn't really that bothered about, like Brian Myers, they all had great quality. So, cannot complain. You know what I'm going to say? Watch it. Please go and watch Impact Wrestling. You can watch it on Twitch for free if you're in North America. You can watch it on Twitch actually for free if you're in the UK. If you're happy to watch Jessica Havoc stream, she does talk over it a little bit, but hey, it's still free wrestling and it can't complain. You can watch Twitch on pretty much any fucking device these days, and you know, it's on Access TV. I know people want to use the excuse, oh, it's difficult to find. It's really not, is it? It's really not. You'd have to be fucking stupid and very, very, very entitled to not search out Impact Wrestling. If you want to watch good wrestling, you'll find it. But the problem with wrestling fans is that ultimately a lot of them are too fucking lazy and bone idle to just go and look for something that is an alternative. That's why they're still stuck on the major two brands. And that's great if that's what you want to do. But don't come crying at me when the shows that you watch aren't very good because you're too lazy to come and watch something like Impact. This show is great. You should be watching it more. I've been Aaron X. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug.